Hey guys, Darren Kai, coach of Wise Pods, and welcome back to another team review post round 23. One more week in the AFL fantasy season left to go, and it was a pretty unusual weekend. I would have thought, there wasn't any massive scores. I would have thought, just with a lot of minor things going on, with a lot of people scoring between that 80 and 90 mark, a lot of popular players. But that led my team to score a 22.92 for the week, which was around rank of 5,500. So very sort of par ranges. Did mean that I moved up just over 100 spots in the overall ranking, though, which was pleasing to see that I still moved in the right direction, even though I thought I was having a pretty poor week. Because ultimately I was. If you look at my team here, a lot of these 80 to 90 scores, just yeah, pretty poor. Midfield, very unusual, especially when I have five players that are sort of ranked around that $1.1 million. To only have 2 tons in there is very, very poor. I did take Butters in the end with his 97, pushed through that tag, which was pleasing. The Rucks, shout out to them, they did absolutely amazingly. And they've just been a consistent source of scoring all year and something that we should rely on a fair bit more. Forwards were pretty shocking again, besides the two Geelong boys there. Jackson stunk it up with a 56, which is something to be concerned about. That was his first poor score in a fair while. Since round 8 was his last sort of bad score, and now he's put up an even worse score. So that's unusual. Up against uh, Tim English and Sam Darcy this weekend to finish it off. Could be a bit of a tougher one. May struggle to get the hit out. So could we move off him? I wouldn't rule it out with one week left to play out. But yeah, he's concerned. Kennedy and Daniel just put up 70s, which is disappointing. Same with Rankin, 78. Ended up taking that over the likes of Jerry McCameron, which worked out in my favour. I was very worried about Jerry McCameron, but he was on a decent score at halftime with like 46 points, I want to say. I didn't double check that, but he was around that sort of range. But the man that deserves all the praise and ultimately saved my round this week was Harry Sheezel. 186 points as my captain. Double that, 372 points. He just had an absolute day out. 54 disposals, equal most ever in the AFL VFL era. Equaled with Tom Mitchell now. 7 marks, 5 tackles, and kicked a couple goals, and probably could have kicked a few more, with one hitting the post and one just squeezing through for a behind. Could have got close to the 200 mark, but he just was absolutely racking it up. Got no attention from Richmond whatsoever. So I guess when we're looking at targets this week, it's hard to look past Geelong players. They will be the number one target because they did not man up whatsoever. They just allowed Harry Sheezel to do whatever he wanted. And that's sort of why I tossed and turned about whether I wanted to go with Harry Sheezel as my captain. I was sort of tossing between him and Bontempelli as sort of my fullback option. Obviously went with Nasiah as my VC, which was an absolute fail there. But at the end of the day, I'm having a pretty terrible round anyway. I want to be a little bit different because doing what everyone else is doing is not going to gain me anything at this time of year. So I ultimately just threw the C on Sheezel, and it was an absolute pleasure watching that game out and about Sunday. He just was everywhere. And probably one of the best individual games I've seen from one player ever. Even when we consider it to Tom Mitchell, who's equaled that record, he only scored 150 something, and that was purely disposals. Whereas Harry Sheezel hit the scoreboard and was pretty impactful in terms of the way he used the ball. So yeah, big shout out to him. He deserves all the praise. But my -3 this week has to go to Connor Rozee, 60, my lowest score on field this week. And just from a player that has been super consistent all year, putting up these 100s, 120s all season, put up a 60. Yes, I know he's been struggling with a hand injury and whatnot, but that should be behind you by now. You've had 4 or 5 weeks to recover. You've been scoring okay for the last 2 or 3 weeks, besides that laid out against Geelong there, which was purely due to illness. Didn't cop any attention from what I saw. Didn't actually watch the game too closely, but yeah, that's pretty disappointing from him. So he deserves my -3 there. And ultimately, if you traded him out, back in round 19 or round 21, you'd be fairly happy right now. But I think I'll be holding on to him this week to round out the season up against Gold Coast Suns. He plays Friday night, so I'll probably be looping him on my bench this week, seeing how he goes, and I'll probably take it if it's something decent. So we'll see how that sort of plays out. But just looking at my trade reviews here, now I'll take this as a loss in my opinion. Brody Grundy, Terrell Marshall. Yes, you can look at it as Brody Grundy scored 0, but I would have expected Brody Grundy to score more than what Terrell Marshall did this week, 121. I'll take it, but it wasn't anything amazing to write home about. But when you're thinking Tom McCarthy to Josh Dunkley, you're probably expecting in your head, 30 to 50 points. You're going from a rookie to a top line premium. I got 9 points upgrade there. 82 is what Tom McCarthy scored, and Josh Dunkley scored 91. 9 points of upgrade. That is diabolical, and to think how much I paid up for him is even worse. Josh Dunkley just does not like being in my team, and I do apologise to everyone that was sort of relying on him as a matchup winner, because I did say I was going to break him because, yeah, I had him through a big portion of the season, from I think round 9 to about round 15 before I traded him at his bye, where he probably averaged 90 between that sort of section, and now he's probably averaging around that for me over across 6 games. So he may end up on my never again list if he does put up another poor one against the Hawks on the weekend, because he just does not like me, unfortunately. But maybe that should go towards me, because I shouldn't have traded in a player that did have a tougher matchup to finish off the season. Could have definitely searched for a bigger ceiling player, like a Luke Davies-Uniacke, who absolutely dominated in this game along with Sheasel, 40 touches. Not that I was ever looking here, but just something to mention that he does have a huge ceiling, and dead rubber games like this, where they are just fighting for pride, he can put up some big matchups. Same with Tristan Cherry, they just absolutely dominated there. 165, 18 tackles, and now Cherry's going out 150, 155, and 165 against Nankervis in his last 3. So it'll be really interesting to see where that matchup looks and lies next season when we're considering Tristan Cherry as a starting pick next year, because he will be cheap. I'd say at 102 average so far. I don't expect that to be any better than that up against the Crows this weekend. Probably even drops below that 102 mark. So he'll be fairly cheap next year if we consider him. But a few others to mention in my sides. Again, the midfields are pretty poor. Rao put up his first bad score since round 10, first sub ton, with an 86. Disappointing after having him for 3 weeks. Dacos 106 was okay in a tougher matchup. I spoke about Dunkley. Dawson was pretty poor in what was we considered to be a decent matchup for him in terms of captaincy. I know a few people that went there. Brayshaw just continues his terrible ways with a 90. I think he even saved that with a pretty decent last quarter. So again, someone that we could look at trade out if you're if you're in a really good spot. McKercher was okay, but we're hoping for a little bit more in a very good matchup. The two St Kilda boys down back with an 81, that was just deplorable against a pretty easy matchup in Essendon. So maybe Essendon isn't the easiest matchup that we're thinking they are. So something to consider when we're looking at trades this week. Maybe not looking at the likes of the Carlton boys, who do play on Thursday night, I believe. Expecting Holmes to bounce back this week against the Richmond Tigers. Obviously, we've seen what Sheasel was able to do against them. Maybe we could see a replica from Holmes. We know he does have some ball magnet ability. Same with Bailey Smith. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all it is about my team. Just trying to think. Bad scores, we had the likes of Josh Dacos, who got tagged. That was pretty disappointing. I know Zorko did pretty well. All these sort of guys that we hadn't been looking at for a little while did pretty well. So it was a pretty unusual week. That's why I said it. So unusual. So what are we looking to do this week and who are we targeting in a sense? Essentially, I've got, if you don't have any of the important Geelong players like your Bailey Smiths, your Holmes, your Jeremy Camerons, they're probably the main targets you're looking at. Even the GWS boys who are up against St Kilda. St Kilda are a pretty good matchup, especially for halfback. So you're probably looking at the likes of Lockie Whitfield and Lockie Ash. They're pretty good ones. The Sydney boys as well, Heaney, they finish off a West Coast, so they will go fairly well. Probably not looking to do any trades in the ruck line, unless you maybe are an owner of Tristan Cherry. You can maybe jump on Brody Grundy as that bit of a unique ruck jump. But if you're an owner of Max Gawn or Rowan Marshall, you're just riding them out. Even Tim English, you're probably just riding them through. But trade outs in terms, Rankin is something that I need to mention. He looks like he is likely going to be suspended for 4 or 5 weeks, which would mean his season is done for a slur that he's said to another player. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. But I don't see him getting away with any sort of... He's not getting off this week, is what I'm trying to say. So that is really disappointing for someone that I have owned all season and was hoping he'd go well against North Melbourne. He looks like he's a forced trade out, so he is in my trade out plan so far. And I'm also looking at trading at Caleb Daniel. Again, someone else that I've had all season, but again, tougher matchup to finish off the season against Adelaide. He can go, as I already have a 7th forward anyway, he's someone that I can trade out. And I'm looking at bringing in Lockie Ash and Shannon Neal at the moment. Not absolutely happy with these trades, but considering who I'm trading out, I don't have the massive amount of coin to play with. So this is sort of the best I can get to. Hoping that, Shannon Neal can have a day out alongside Jeremy Cameron. Has been fairly good in the last couple of weeks with a couple tons and hitting the scoreboard quite well with, averaging 3.5 goals over the last 3 weeks, even in some tougher matchups. Should go fairly well against Richmond and hopefully can hit a 90 plus here. And Lockie Ash, even though he hasn't been amazing the last 2 weeks, is just cheap enough that I can grab him in a very, very good matchup where he went 113 last time they played. So that's what I'm looking at. But again, plenty of good players to target this week with only 1 week left to go. Even, the likes of Thilthorpe, if you're looking to just target a key forward that can go absolutely massive this week, he could go really, really well against North Melbourne. So just really looking at the fixture, targeting those players and just jumping on them for 1 week to see off the season. But with having 23 premiums, I'm looking at looping a fair few players. So, like I said, Rosie, he'll be someone that I look to loop this week, playing Friday night. McKercher up against the likes of Crows is someone that I'm a little bit concerned with as well. So, I want to have a look at him. We'll have to see how I can do that, though, because I don't have 2 red dots that I can run both in the midfield and the defensive line with the way my team's structured. So I may look to just go Connor Rosie first, lock that one in if he does well. If not, then obviously I can filter things through, put McKercher down back, and just run the rest of the team as they are. I don't think there's any tag concerns this week. Realistically, just looking at the fixture, there's not a huge amount to really be considered. So I think that's probably about it realistically, guys. So pretty easy week. I'll dive a little bit deeper into trade targets when it comes to trade mode Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. But besides that, hopefully you had a great weekend and hopefully you won your league matchups or your draft matchups and you're heading into a grand final for your cash leagues and whatnot, or just for pride. Besides that, please leave a like, subscribe, and do all those great things, and I will see you Wednesday. Cheers, guys.
All the pain.